Okay, so ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling something, well, kind of makes you squirm a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's all about embracing reality,
Oh, yeah. The whole even when it's tough thing.
even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
We've got a whole bunch of sources here, and they all seem to be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Facing those hard truths, those things we try to avoid,
Yeah, yeah.
well, they might actually set us free.
It's kind of like a paradox, right? I mean, we're basically wired to, go towards what feels good and run from what feels bad.
Right.
So it makes sense that we'd kind of gravitate towards those stories, those narratives that make us feel, I don't know, comfy.
Yeah, comfy, even if they're not, like, completely true.
Exactly, exactly.
So let's get into this. Why do we do that? Why do we, as humans, as people, why do we sometimes shy away from this stuff that makes us feel, I don't know, a little squirmy, right?
Yeah.
What's going on in our heads?
So the sources we've been looking at, they point to a few things, right? First off, and this is like kind of obvious, but facing certain truths can bring up, some icky feelings, guilt, shame, sadness.
Nobody wants to feel that stuff.
Right. No one enjoys that. So it's like natural to want to just sidestep it all.
Like our brains are trying to, like, protect us from feeling bad.
Totally, totally. And then there's this whole other thing. It's called cognitive dissonance.
Okay?
It's basically this idea that our brains, they absolutely hate contradictions. So, like, if we come across some new info, but it clashes with what we already believe,
Yeah.
boom, mental tension.
Uh,
So a lot of the time, it's just easier to kind of subconsciously, just reject that new information, keep the peace, keep things feeling, consistent.
so is there even a way to overcome this? Like, it sounds like we're almost like wired to resist anything challenging.
Well, it's definitely not a cakewalk, but our sources, they suggest something pretty interesting. They say we got to actively look for different perspectives, even if they totally go against what we already think.
Oh, what?
It's about like training our minds to be more flexible, to be open to new stuff. Imagine your belief system is like a house, right?
Okay, okay.
If all you ever do is reinforce those walls, it becomes this like super rigid, inflexible thing. But, if you're willing to add some windows, a door, maybe even knock down a wall or two,
Yeah.
you're letting in more light, more fresh air, more possibility.
I love that. Like, we need to be constantly renovating our mental houses.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's a great analogy.
And this whole avoidance thing, it's not just us, individually.
Yeah.
This plays out on a much bigger scale, like societal level.
Oh, interesting.
Think about all those topics people just don't talk about.
Yeah.
The taboos. Or how certain stories, certain narratives, they just get, pushed in the media.
Right, right.
Sometimes it feels like there's these acceptable versions of reality.
Yeah.
And if you stray from those, there can be consequences. Oh, absolutely. Can you give some examples of that? Like, what are we all kind of like brushing under the rug as a society?
Okay, so one thing our sources talk about is, wow, cultural taboos. These are, those topics that are like off limits, not because they're not important, but because they make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like think about death or mental health. In some cultures, talking openly about these things, huge taboo.
Yeah, for sure.
And what happens is it prevents people from, seeking help or having these really important conversations.
It's like we're prioritizing, I don't know, comfort over honesty, even when it comes to things that like really matter.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's, this whole thing with political correctness.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, often the intention is good, right? Like wanting to avoid offending anyone.
Right.
But sometimes it can end up stifling, important discussions. Like we're so afraid of saying the wrong thing that we end up not saying anything at all.
It's like we're walking on eggshells.
Exactly, exactly. And, you can't forget the media. They play a role too.
Of course.
They often present these, simplified or sometimes even biased versions of reality
Oh, for sure.
to fit certain narratives.
Yeah.
And it makes it harder for everyone to like see the full picture.
It's a lot to think about. And to be honest, it's a little, disheartening how we, like, as people and as a whole society,
All right.
we shy away from the hard stuff. But here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Our sources, they all agree there's a huge upside to facing reality, straight on.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when we do that? What happens when we actually embrace those uncomfortable truths?
That's when things get really, really good.
Yeah.
Our sources, they highlight three main benefits: self-awareness, being free from illusion, and resilience.
Okay, let's break those down. Let's start with self-awareness.
So self-awareness, it's all about being honest with ourselves, right? About our strengths, our weaknesses, even our fears. And when we do that, it lets us make better choices.
So it's not about like dwelling on the negative stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about using that knowledge to like move forward.
Yes, absolutely. Like, for the longest time, I used to be terrified of public speaking.
Oh, wow.
I would avoid it at all costs. But eventually I realized this fear, it was holding me back.
Yeah.
So I had to face it. I started small, joined a public speaking group, and slowly I built up my confidence. And yeah, it was uncomfortable at first, but man, it helped me grow so much.
That's a perfect example of how like facing a fear can unlock all these new possibilities.
Yeah.
What about the second benefit? You said freedom from illusion.
Oh, right. So when we dodge the truth, we end up kind of trapped in these comfy little lies.
Right.
But facing reality, no matter how tough it feels, it sets us free. Imagine, okay, you're in this beautifully decorated room, but every single window is boarded up. Sure, it might feel safe and cozy, but you're missing out on the sunshine, the fresh air, the
Oh,
view.
famously.
Embracing reality is like throwing those windows wide open and letting all that light pour in.
It's like stepping out of this, I don't know, self-made darkness and seeing things for what they truly are.
Mm-hmm.
Might be blinding at first, but so much more authentic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, what about that third benefit? Resilience.
Right. So when we confront tough stuff head on, it actually makes us more resilient. Think of it like working out, but for your mind. It might be tough at first, but over time you get stronger, better equipped to handle whatever life throws at you.
So each time we face a fear or process something difficult or just, get through a tough situation, we're kind of building up our mental muscles.
Yeah, exactly.
So the big takeaway here is don't run away from the hard stuff, whether it's personal or something going on in society. Embrace reality. It might feel uncomfortable, but it can lead to, greater self-awareness, a sense of freedom, and like you said, resilience.
Absolutely. And I think this message, it really resonates with anyone who's, looking for deeper meaning or just wants to live a more authentic life. It's about being brave enough to question the narratives we're given and actually seek out the truth.
So as we wrap things up here, we want to leave you with something to think about. What's one hard truth that you've been avoiding? And what do you think might happen if you actually faced it head on?
It doesn't have to be some huge, massive thing.
Yep.
Even taking small steps towards embracing reality can, make a huge difference over time.
It's all about taking that first step.
That leap of faith. Who knows what you might discover?
About yourself, the world around you.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.